Hello everyone, welcome back to the world of Tana Dreams. Okay, I usually would say this is Tana Dreams speaking, but for the very first episode and preceding videos in this series, this is Brandon speaking. These stories from the Open Up and Draw series did not happen to the face of this channel, these stories happened to me. With that out of the way, today we will be talking about something I never thought I'd come forward with. It will be about my least favorite teacher, whom I will call Ms. Dawson. In all my years in school, and keep in mind I'm about to graduate with my master's in business, this teacher was hands down the absolute worst teacher I had ever met. What's so ironic about her is that she wasn't even my teacher. That's right, I was never even her student, but she still managed to scar and traumatize me, the worst of all the teachers I ever had. So to fully paint the picture, no pun intended, you do need to know a little background about the series of events leading up to me meeting Miss Dawson. I was in the 8th grade, yes, 8th grade when I met Miss Dawson, and to make matters worse for myself, I was a new student at the middle school where she worked at. If you ever met me in real life, you would know that I am a very shy person, and 13-year-old me was painfully shy. Adjusting to a new school was the furthest thing from easy for me. Not only did I have a very difficult time adapting to the new school system, but I was getting used to being away from my closest friend groups. And if you were wondering, yes, I had an incredibly hard time making friends at this new school. To sum it up, this was one of the most difficult years of my life. I am currently 25 years old, and I still hold that statement true. Up until I was 13, I would get a brief taunt, kids pushing me, and maybe a troll comment hurled towards me here and there. None of that was acceptable, of course. The point is that it was the worst when I moved to this new school in the 8th grade. I had to deal with kids full-on me, throwing slurs at me, genuinely making fun of me and my physical appearance. I once had a kid ask me, "Do kids run over you because you're so short?" And this other boy once said, "You don't count as an 8th grader because you're too short." The reason why I brought all of this up is because it does tie perfectly well with why Ms. Dawson was the worst teacher I had ever encountered. As I mentioned, Ms. Dawson wasn't even my teacher. She was a US history teacher just next door from my own history teacher. Here is how we met. My own history teacher one day sent me over to her room to get a laptop so I could complete an assignment. I walked over to her room, and immediately when I entered the room, this kid, whom at the time I had never seen before, yells out something like, "Hey, look, what's going on, Asian kid?" Yes, I am Asian, and as much as I truly hate to admit it, I have never been 100% comfortable in my own skin. I had come from a small town where I was the only Asian kid, so I stuck out like a sore thumb. However, the most I would get was a "Hey, have you ever been to China?" or "Can you speak Chinese?" question from my fellow elementary school classmates. Of course, it was inappropriate, but the point is that this was the very first time in my life that a kid flat out called me out because of my race. Hey guys, future Tana Dreams here. One detail I forgot to elaborate on is that I have in total lived in 3 cities in my life. The first city I mentioned, that was the one where I was the only Asian kid at school. The second city I moved to, I actually didn't have many problems at all, and there were actually slightly more Asian children. And the third city, which is where this middle school is, that's the one with the most Asian children, yet I was receiving the most. Also, another note, from this point on, I will be saying any words that could get this video flagged, not only in Pig Latin, but also in reverse, because this word on screen, even said in Pig Latin, could still sound like the real thing, so unfortunately I do have to take this extra step. I will leave a text of what the word essentially is on screen, but just keep that in mind. Anyways, along with the video. I was honestly really confused when it happened, so I just gave him a look and ignored him. And if you're wondering, no, I was not the only Asian kid at this new school, or even the school I attended previously. There were many. I would say over 20% of the school population was of Asian descent. So it does baffle me, even to this day, why my harassment had peaked at this new school where kids of Asian descent were pretty common. I walked up to Ms. Dawson and said, "Hi, I'm here to get a laptop." She just said, "Okay, they're in the cart over there, just don't take laptop number 18. Keep in mind that the laptops were stored in big laptop carts where each laptop was plugged into a slot within the cart. It was the first time I had ever seen a cart like this. Again, I came from smaller school districts who didn't have equipment like this, so I remembered her saying not to take laptop number 18. I was like, okay, I'll take laptop number 22. Now, what you're supposed to do is just unplug a wire from the charging outlet of the laptop and go. However, I didn't know that, and I ended up unplugging the entire wire from the cart because I thought you were supposed to take everything. Then Ms. Dawson shouts at the top of her lungs,
"Hey, is that laptop number 18? When I told you not to take it?"
I froze because aside from my parents, I had never had anyone scream like that at me at that point in my life. I just said, "No," and she continued screaming at the top of her lungs,
"Then why is it unplugged?"
I then concluded you were not supposed to remove the wire. I put it back and then walked away. On top of being very shy, I was also very sensitive, and I still am. That interaction with Ms. Dawson absolutely upsetted me, but being a 13-year-old boy, I know showing emotion or admitting to being upset would be a huge taboo in the environment I was in. So I just had to turn off my emotions for the rest of that day, suppress it, and hold it in. What made things worse was that it really did embarrass me in front of that class, and I knew that the kid who made that extremely inappropriate slur at me was having the time of his life watching me get yelled at. Miss Dawson basically gave that kid the satisfaction of hurting me. Now, this kid, I had no idea of his name for the longest time, but I later on would. Let's just call him Steven. Steven was the definition of a troublemaker. He would sometimes find me and do things to outright harass me. Like one time, he found me walking by the band hall and kicked my saxophone and cheered about it while I was making rockstar hand gestures. Here's how I learned Steven's name. To my most unfortunate luck, his last name began with a letter right before my last name. In Texas, whenever we had standardized tests, or at least at the time, they would cluster the students by last name and then assign them a specific teacher and room. Please put a pin here. This detail is important for later. Anyways, Steven would always be in my testing rooms whenever we had serious standardized exams. Every time he would harass me, he would walk around by me and scuff my hair just to taunt me, and he would go behind me and dance just to make a fool out of me, all whilst I was taking my exams. Did any of these teachers ever call him out for his absolutely horrible behavior? No, they never did. Here's where things really escalated. I had only encountered Ms. Dawson 3 other times after that unfortunate first time. As I mentioned earlier, whenever the school had standardized tests or sometimes even events, we would get clustered usually by last name and get assigned to a specific teacher. I had the misfortune of getting Ms. Dawson nearly every single time. I still remember the utter dread and anxiety I felt whenever I had to deal with her again. The first 1 or 2 times, I actually didn't have any issues with her, but that's because I kept quiet, hid, and avoided her like the plague. The third time though was where things had to draw a line. This third time, I was yet again placed in the same room as her, Steven, and 2 of his goon friends who also took part in my torment. So after we were done taking an exam, Ms. Dawson decided to kill some time by playing Heads Up 7-Up. Basically how you would play is a group of kids will be selected to go to the front of the classroom, and the rest of the kids will place their heads face down on the desk, but keep one thumb sticking up. The kids in the front will walk around and tap the kids with their thumbs up. And after the kids walking around were done, the kids who were tapped needed to guess who tapped their thumb. One of the kids going around was one of Steven's goons, so when my thumb was tapped, I immediately knew it was him. When I got called, I stood up and said something like, "I know it's you, the creepy guy who would follow me everywhere." Alright, I do admit fault on my part here. It was immature and inappropriate of me to call him out like that. I would have handled it differently now, but after that game, Steven and his goons continued to mock me, taunt me, belittle me, and shame me about my race, something I was not only insecure about, but also something I cannot control. They would laugh at me, make hand gestures like guns and pretend to shoot me, and at one point, Steven himself said a phrase so inappropriate I do not feel comfortable saying it on here. Essentially, he did make a death threat towards me. That crossed the line for me. I walked up to Ms. Dawson and said, "Ms. Dawson, those boys are harassing me." Ms. Dawson didn't even look at me. She just replied, "Sweetie, just sit down." Now, I'm 100% sure Ms. Dawson was irritated with the way I called out Steven's goons, but still, this was... As a teacher, you have a responsibility to address when it happens in your very own classroom. For anyone who doesn't know, teachers can get in trouble if they don't report things such as so this was something she had full responsibility to address, and she refused. Basically, Steven and his goons could get bolder and bolder with their belittling of me, and Ms. Dawson would 100% allow it to happen. After this event, my family and I did bring this up with the head dean, not only regarding Steven and his goons' horrid behavior, but also for Ms. Dawson's unprofessional behavior. Justice was served towards Steven, I will say that. I do not know if Ms. Dawson ever did get reprimanded for that incident. I do know for a fact that she still works at that middle school to this day. I know that because my neighbor who attends that same middle school has her, and she has told me that Ms. Dawson continues to be rude, short, and condescending towards her students. Now, even though this is Brandon speaking, this is still the world of Tana Dreams. We are all about art, creativity, and positivity. Even though a lot of negative things did happen in this story, I still want us to look back and reflect on it. I have no ill will against Ms. Dawson. I am just glad that I'm finally speaking out about this. If Ms. Dawson ever became the teacher of my own kids, I would do everything in my power to move them away from her. No teacher should ever allow horrible behavior like Steven and his goons, especially when it happens in your very own classroom, and especially when that student may be in a very difficult time in their lives. Yes, I completely acknowledge that Ms. Dawson did not know my story, and I was not 100% innocent myself. Nonetheless, her behavior was unacceptable. You should never shout at students when they make simple mistakes, and you should never allow to happen in your own classroom. It is your job and duty to make sure your students have as healthy of a learning environment as possible. You can get in serious trouble for allowing something like or I can confirm this as a former substitute teacher and as a certified English teacher. Even Sunday school teachers can be held accountable for this. If you ever find yourself in a situation like this, you need to tell someone. You do not need to endure this treatment. If you're a student, you need to tell your parents or an authoritative figure above the teachers. I know, kids sometimes make fun of others for reporting bad behavior, but who said that you needed to tell anyone, right? If you're a parent or know someone, please let a supervisor or someone above those teachers know as well. Things like this need to stop as soon as possible. Ms. Dawson, all I can say is that you need to reflect on your behavior, not only for yourself or your job, but also for the students who you have hurt and the students who rely on you. Your actions can impact anyone, even someone who wasn't even your student. Thank you everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and got something out of it. Please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. The world of Tana Dreams is full of art, creativity, and positivity, and I would love to have you visit again. Have a wonderful rest of your day. May all your sweet dreams come true.